Chosen one, heaven just broke protocol. Stop everything, right now. This isn't coincidence, this is divine intervention. You didn't stumble onto this message. You were summoned, called by name, pulled by forces you can't see but your spirit recognizes. The 30th of July wasn't just circled on some earthly calendar. It was carved into the fabric of eternity before time began. And you, yes, you, are standing at the epicenter of a spiritual earthquake that's about to reshape everything they told you was impossible. Listen carefully. Every attack that tried to break you has failed. Every door they slammed in your face was God redirecting your steps. Every night you cried yourself to sleep thinking you were forgotten, heaven was orchestrating your comeback. You feel it, don't you? That stirring in your chest, that quickening in your spirit. That's not anxiety, that's awakening. You're not having a breakdown, you're having a breakthrough. And it's happening right now. For months, maybe years, you've been asking God for a sign, a word, some confirmation that He still sees you, still chooses you, still has plans for you. This is your sign. The enemy thought the silence meant abandonment. They celebrated your isolation. They mocked your tears. They counted you out, wrote you off, buried you alive in rejection. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that God was using their hatred to hide you, to prepare you, to forge you in fires that would have destroyed anyone else. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. You weren't being rejected. You were being refined. You weren't being forgotten. You were being fashioned into something they never saw coming. And the 30th of July. That's your divine start date, your spiritual new year. The moment heaven stops whispering and starts roaring over your life. What you're about to hear in the next hour isn't just teaching, it's prophecy. It's not just encouragement, it's explosive truth that will detonate every lie the enemy convinced you to believe about yourself. You see, beloved, you were never ordinary. You were born for divine warfare, marked for glory, chosen for assignment. And everything that tried to break you was actually building the unbreakable version of yourself. To everyone who stood with this message through prayer, through partnership, through the sacred act of sowing into heaven's work, you're not just supporting content, you're funding revival. You're underwriting breakthrough. You're investing in the very word that's about to set captives free. If you're still breathing, you're still chosen. If your heart is still beating, your mission isn't finished. If you can hear these words, you're exactly where heaven planned for you to be. Now breathe. Stay close. Lean in, because what you're about to discover has the power to rewrite your entire story. Your divine start begin now. Have you ever felt like you were fighting an enemy you couldn't name? Like invisible hands were orchestrating your downfall while everyone else lived in blissful ignorance? Have you wondered why every door slammed shut just as your fingers touched the handle? Why every friendship turned cold just as your heart opened wide? You weren't imagining it, chosen one. The warfare was real. The attacks were calculated. The ambushes were intentional. You were the one carrying fire in a world built for ice. You were the voice of truth in a symphony of lies. You were the light they couldn't dim, so they tried to bury you instead. Listen carefully. What you experienced wasn't coincidence. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't your fault. It was spiritual warfare. Every whispered lie in the dark corridors of your mind, every piece of slander passed from mouth to mouth behind your back, every door that mysteriously locked when you approached, every opportunity that evaporated the moment you reached for it, all coordinated, all strategic, all designed to break the very thing in you that threatened their kingdom of darkness. You felt it, didn't you? That weight pressing down on your chest at 3 a.m., that heaviness that made simple tasks feel like climbing mountains, that isolation that crept in even when you were surrounded by people. They called it depression. You knew it was deeper. They called it anxiety. You sensed it was warfare. They told you to get over it. But your spirit was screaming that something invisible was hunting you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah 1-5. God didn't just know you were coming, beloved. He marked you before you took your first breath. He wrote your name in his book before you learned to write your own. And the enemy has been tracking that signature ever since. You weren't overthinking. You were spiritually aware. You weren't paranoid. You were perceptive. You weren't losing your mind. You were seeing through dimensions others couldn't access. What if I told you that every rejection was actually redirection? That every closed door was heaven's way of saying, "Not that one, I have something better." What if the delay wasn't denial but divine incubation? What if your silence wasn't punishment but preparation? What if God used their hatred to hide you? Think about it. While they were busy plotting your destruction, heaven was plotting your destiny. While they whispered your name in dark rooms, angels were writing your name in golden books. While they celebrated your setbacks, God was setting up your comeback. You see, chosen one, the enemy made one critical mistake. He revealed his hand too early. He showed you exactly who was for you and who was against you before your moment of power arrived. Every snake uncoiled itself in the light. Every Judas kissed your cheek before the resurrection. Every Pharaoh hardened his heart before the Red Sea parted. They didn't reject you. They revealed themselves. And God let them show their true faces while you were still in the wilderness, while you were still hidden, while you were still being prepared for a throne they couldn't imagine. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel it? That stirring in your chest. That's not anxiety. That's awakening. The fire they tried to extinguish is still burning. The voice they tried to silence is still speaking. The calling they tried to abort is still alive. You carried their rejection like a weight, but heaven saw it as a badge of honor. You interpreted their silence as abandonment, but God heard it as selection. You thought their hatred meant you were worthless, but the enemy only attacks what threatens his territory. Lions don't hunt rabbits, beloved. They hunt other lions. And the fact that hell organized an entire campaign against you tells you everything you need to know about who you really are. You weren't being destroyed. You were being distinguished. You weren't being eliminated. You were being elevated in secret. You weren't being forgotten. You were being forged in fires that would have consumed anyone else. The invisible war was real, but so was your invisible protection. The attacks were strategic, but so was your survival. The warfare was coordinated, but so was your victory. Every morning you woke up despite the weight pressing down on you that was supernatural strength. Every day you chose hope when despair whispered louder, that was divine grace. Every night you went to sleep, still believing tomorrow could be different. That was the faith of a warrior. You didn't just survive the invisible war, chosen one. You won it, and now the enemy's strategy has backfired. Because everything he used to isolate you actually insulated you. Everything he used to break you actually built you. Everything he used to bury you was actually planting you. The seeds of your destruction became the roots of your destiny. But here's what they never saw coming, what they couldn't calculate in all their schemes and strategies. Chosen one, say this aloud. I wasn't being destroyed. I was being distinguished. Say it again. Let your voice carry the weight of every tear you cried in secret. Let your words echo the truth your spirit always knew, but your mind couldn't grasp. You were marked for greatness, and every attack was just confirmation. But what if I told you that the invisible war was only the beginning? What if the real story starts now with what God was building in you while the enemy was busy trying to break you? What if I told you that the 30th of July isn't just another date on the calendar, but the moment when everything hidden in the darkness finally steps into the light? Have you ever wondered why your deepest wounds came with witnesses? Why your most sacred tears fell in front of the very people who should have caught them? Why heaven seemed silent when your soul was screaming the loudest? What if I told you that every tear had a timestamp, every silence had a scroll? Every moment you thought God had turned his back, he was actually turning toward you with a marking pen of glory. Chosen one, listen to me carefully. You were not abandoned in your darkest hour. You were anointed in it. They gathered around your pain like vultures circling carrion. They whispered about your breakdown behind closed doors. They counted you out when you couldn't even count your own heartbeats. But what they witnessed wasn't your destruction, it was your divine selection. You see, God has a strange way of choosing vessels. He doesn't pick them from the spotlight. He finds them in the shadows. He doesn't anoint them on stages. He marks them in the valley of the shadow of death. While you were bleeding, heaven was writing. While you were breaking, glory was baking. While you were dying to everything you thought you knew about yourself, God was breathing resurrection life into the version of you they could never kill. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5 wasn't just written for ancient prophets, beloved. It was written for you. In that emergency room of the soul where you thought you were dying, God was actually delivering you. Every betrayal was a baptism. Every rejection was a recognition ceremony in heaven's courts. Every door they slammed in your face was God redirecting your steps toward a throne they couldn't see. You were the one who carried fire in a world built for ice. The one who spoke truth in a culture addicted to comfortable lies. The one who loved with your whole heart while everyone else was protecting theirs behind walls of cynicism and fear. And they called you crazy. Too much, too intense, too deep. But what if your intensity wasn't a flaw? It was a frequency. What if your depth wasn't depression? It was divine download. What if everything they labeled as too much was actually the exact amount heaven needed to accomplish the impossible through you? Here's what they didn't know. You were not just protected during those dark nights. You were sealed, marked, set apart with an oil they couldn't wash off and a calling they couldn't cancel. They thought the delay was your defeat, but heaven called it preservation. You see, some vessels are too precious to be unveiled before their time. Some assignments are too important to be rushed into before proper preparation. Some glory is too bright to be revealed until the enemy has shown all his cards and exhausted all his weapons. God had to hide you until he was ready to shock them. You weren't being buried, beloved. You were being planted. And every shovel full of dirt they threw on your dreams was actually covering the seed of something they never saw coming. The silence wasn't abandonment. It was incubation. The isolation wasn't rejection. It was protection. The delay wasn't denial. It was divine timing. Close your eyes for just a moment. Can you feel it? That stirring in your chest? That's not anxiety, precious one. That's awakening. That's the sound of everything they buried, beginning to break through the soil. While the crowd watched the tomb, heaven scheduled your unveiling. Think about it. Jesus was most anointed when he appeared most abandoned, most powerful when he looked most powerless, most glorified when he seemed most defeated. The cross wasn't the end of the story, it was the setup for the resurrection. And your cross, your Calvary moment, your place of apparent defeat, that wasn't your ending either. That was your beginning. That was the place where death had to bow to the life that was hidden in you. You want to know why it hurt so much? Because divine selection always comes with divine pressure. You want to know why the attacks were so relentless? Because the enemy could smell the oil on you before you even knew you were anointed. They came against you with everything they had. Gossip, rejection, betrayal, abandonment, financial lack, health scares, family dysfunction, and still you're here. Still breathing, still believing, still carrying fire in your bones. That's not luck, chosen one. That's supernatural preservation. You survived what should have killed you. You endured what should have ended you. You overcame what should have overthrown you. And now you stand as living proof that when God marks someone for divine assignment, hell itself cannot erase the signature. Every tear you cried in secret was collected in heaven's bottle. Every prayer you whispered through gritted teeth was recorded in eternity's archives. Every time you chose to keep breathing when dying felt easier, you were writing testimonies that will set captives free for generations. But here's the part that will shift your perspective forever. God didn't just mark you while you bled to comfort you. He marked you to commission you. He didn't seal you just to save you. He sealed you to send you. The oil on your life isn't just for your healing, it's for their deliverance. The fire in your bones isn't just to warm you, it's to burn away the chains on others who are still trapped where you used to be. You were marked in the valley, so you could guide others to the mountaintop. You were chosen in the pit so you could throw down ropes for those still climbing out. You were anointed in the darkness so you could be a lighthouse for those still lost at sea. What if the delay wasn't about you at all? What if it was about them, the ones who needed you to be fully prepared before you showed up? What if your season of hiddenness was actually God's mercy on a world that wasn't ready for your fire until now? You see, timing isn't just about when you're ready, it's about when they're desperate enough to receive what you carry. And beloved, the world has never been more desperate for authentic voices, for real fire, for people who've been through hell and came back carrying heaven. They're tired of plastic perfection. They're hungry for genuine glory. They're desperate for someone who's been marked by both pain and power, who can speak to their wounds and their worthiness with equal authority. And that someone is you. So whisper this to your spirit right now. Even bleeding, I was still chosen. Say it again, with more conviction. Even bleeding, I was still chosen. One more time, until it settles in your bones. Even bleeding, I was still chosen. Because what's about to happen in your life will require you to remember this truth when the spotlight hits and the stage gets bright and the world tries to convince you that your pain disqualifies you from your purpose. It doesn't. It validates it. Your scars are your credentials. Your tears were your training. Your breakdown was your breakthrough in disguise. And the 30th of July? That's not just the day everything changes. That's the day everything you survived starts making sense. But before we step into the fullness of what God is releasing, there's something else you need to understand about divine timing and why this moment, this exact moment, was written in eternity's schedule long before you ever took your first breath. Have you ever felt like time itself was against you? Like every season that should have opened, closed? Like every door that should have swung wide, slammed shut in your face? What if I told you that every tick of that clock wasn't counting down your failure, but counting up to your freedom? Chosen one, listen to me. Something irreversible is now in motion. Not in your emotions, not in your circumstances. In the courts of heaven itself. This isn't spiritual hype wrapped in pretty words. This is divine legislation, eternal law, cosmic verdict. The 30th of July wasn't scribbled on some random calendar by human hands. It was written in divine ink before you ever took your first breath, before your mother knew your name, before the world knew it needed you. You see, beloved, you've been living under the illusion that time controls you, that delays define you, that missed opportunities disqualify you. But heaven operates on a different calendar, one where your setbacks were setups, where your detours were divine routes, where your silence was sacred preparation. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. You weren't born by accident. You were born by appointment. And the 30th of July, that's when heaven stops preparing and starts revealing. While you were sleeping through restless nights, angels were being dispatched, assignments distributed, territories marked. Your name wasn't whispered in the darkness, it was declared in the light of God's throne room. While you were doubting your worth, your courtroom case was being tried in the highest court in the universe. The charges? Every lie they told you about yourself, every limitation they placed on your future, every door they said you'd never walk through. And the verdict came down like thunder: not guilty, charges dismissed, sentence overturned, promotion granted. You didn't lose time, precious one. You were being retimed, synchronized with heaven's rhythm, aligned with eternity's agenda. What felt like delay was actually divine calibration. Do you know what happens when God retimes a life? What looked impossible yesterday becomes inevitable today. What seemed closed forever suddenly swings open. What appeared dead begins to breathe again. But here's what will shock you to your core. This isn't your comeback. This is your confirmation. God isn't bringing you back to where you were. He's confirming where you've always belonged. You weren't falling behind. You were being held back until the moment was perfect, until the stage was set, until the audience was ready for what heaven was about to unveil through you. For 50 years, maybe 60, maybe more. You've been walking around thinking you missed your moment, believing your chance passed you by, convinced that younger, faster, prettier, smarter people got the opportunities you deserved. But what if every closed door was God's way of saying, "Not yet, beloved, not yet"? What if your isolation wasn't rejection but incubation? What if your silence wasn't punishment but preparation? What if every person who walked away from you was actually walking away from the old version of you, the version that was still becoming who you really are? Close your eyes for just a moment. Can you feel it? That stirring in your chest, that quickening in your spirit? That's not anxiety. That's awakening. That's heaven's frequency finding its way to your heart. The 30th of July marks the beginning of the heavenly reset. Not a reset of your circumstances, although those will change. Not a reset of your relationships, although those will shift. But a reset of your spiritual positioning, your divine standing, your eternal identity. Think about it. Every computer needs a reset when it's been overloaded with viruses, corrupted files, and malicious software. Your soul has been carrying viruses for years. Lies about your worth, corrupted files about your purpose. Malicious software called rejection, abandonment, and shame. But heaven's IT department is about to run a complete system restore. Back to your original settings, back to your factory specifications, back to the version of you that God designed before the world told you who you couldn't be. You know what happens during a heavenly reset? Suddenly, what drained you starts to energize you. What confused you starts to make perfect sense. What broke you starts to build you, because you're no longer running on the world's operating system, you're running on heaven's. And on heaven's system, you don't age out, you don't expire, you don't become obsolete. You become more valuable with every passing year, because every year added wisdom to your hard drive and experience to your software. The people who counted you out, they were counting with the wrong calculator. They were measuring with earthly rulers in a kingdom that operates by heavenly mathematics. In God's economy, what the world calls past your prime, heaven calls perfectly positioned. But I need you to understand something crucial. This reset isn't passive. You can't just sit back and wait for it to happen to you. You have to participate in your own liberation. You have to speak agreement with heaven's verdict over your life. What if every morning you've woken up feeling forgotten was actually God whispering, "Not forgotten, beloved, protected, preserved, prepared"? What if every night you've cried yourself to sleep was heaven, collecting your tears in bottles, saving them as evidence of your faithfulness during the waiting? What if every door that closed in your face was God's way of saying, "I have something better, trust me"? The 30th of July is the day you stop asking what if and start declaring even if. Even if I'm past what they call the right age, I'm exactly the right age for God's purposes. Even if I've made mistakes that disqualified me in their eyes, I'm qualified by grace in God's eyes. Even if the world has moved on without me, heaven has been waiting for me. This is spiritual legislation being passed in real time. Heaven's Congress is in session, and they're voting on your future. The motion on the floor: complete vindication, total restoration, divine elevation. And guess what? It's unanimous. Every angel votes yes. Every star in the sky votes yes. Every promise in God's word votes yes. Even your broken heart, when it finally understands what's happening, votes yes. The gavel is about to fall. The decision is about to be final. The reset is about to begin. But here's the thing about divine resets: they require divine agreement. They need your spiritual signature, your faith-filled yes. Your bold declaration that what heaven says about you matters more than what earth whispered against you. So right now, before another second passes, before another doubt creeps in, before another lie tries to convince you this moment isn't real, I need you to say something out loud. Not in your head, not in your heart. Out loud, where your ears can hear it, where your soul can receive it, where heaven can record it. Chosen one, say it now. The 30th of July is the day my real story begins. Say it again, louder. The 30th of July is the day my real story begins. One more time. with everything in you, the 30th of July is the day my real story begins. Because, beloved, what you just declared isn't hope. It's not wishful thinking. It's not positive confession. It's prophetic agreement with what heaven has already decreed. And when heaven and earth agree, miracles don't just happen. They explode. Have you ever wondered why the pain never killed you? Why you're still standing when everyone said you'd fall? Why your heart kept beating when everything around you was dying? Listen closely, chosen one. What if I told you that every crack in your soul was actually God making room for His glory? What if the breaking wasn't destruction but divine construction? You've carried this weight for so long, the depression that wrapped around you like a straitjacket, the betrayal that felt like a knife twisting in your chest, the wilderness seasons where God's voice seemed swallowed by silence. You thought you were coming apart at the seams, but heaven sees differently. You weren't falling apart. You were being taken apart, deliberately, strategically, by the master builder himself. Every tear was measured. Every sleepless night was monitored. Every moment you thought you were alone, angels were taking notes, recording, documenting, preparing your testimony. The depression, that wasn't your enemy. That was spiritual scaffolding. God was using it to support the construction of something magnificent inside you. The sadness wasn't sinking you, it was deepening you, creating space for a reservoir of compassion that this world desperately needs. The betrayal? Oh, chosen one, that wasn't random cruelty, that was divine strategy. God let the wrong people walk away so the right anointing could stay. He cleared your circle so His Spirit could fill it. Every fake friend who left was making room for authentic favor. You see, beloved, you were the one carrying fire in a world built for ice. Of course they couldn't handle you. Of course they stepped back. Your light was too bright for their comfort zones. Your truth was too sharp for their shallow conversations. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5 wasn't just poetry, chosen one. It was prophecy. Over your life, over this moment, over everything that tried to break you but couldn't. But here's what the enemy didn't calculate. Here's what hell never saw coming. You weren't in ruins. You were under renovation. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you see it? The spiritual blueprint. God wasn't looking at what was broken. He was seeing what was being built. Every loss was clearing ground for something bigger. Every ending was making space for a new beginning. The silence that nearly drove you insane, that shaped your discernment, taught you to hear what others miss, trained you to detect the difference between God's voice and the noise of this world. The rejection that felt like death, that trained your radar. Now you can spot authentic love from a mile away. You can sense genuine intention before they even speak. The pain made you perceptive. What if the delay wasn't rejection but divine incubation? What if your hiding wasn't punishment but preparation? What if every closed door was heaven saying, "Not yet, beloved. You're not ready for what I'm about to release"? Think about it. A butterfly doesn't emerge from the cocoon the same creature that went in. It's transformed, transfigured, totally remade. And during that process, if you cut the cocoon open too early, you kill the butterfly. God's been keeping you in the cocoon, chosen one, not to torture you, to transform you. But here's the urgent truth that's breaking over your spirit right now. If you don't rise now, what part of the world stays in darkness? If you don't speak now, whose voice remains silenced? If you don't step into your calling now, who stays trapped in the same lies that once held you? Your breakthrough isn't just about you, it's about them. The ones still crying the tears you've already cried. The ones still walking through the wilderness you've already survived. The ones still believing the lies you've already overcome. You're not just healed for yourself, you're healed for assignment. Pause, breathe, feel that. Can you sense it stirring? That fire in your bones? That's not anxiety, beloved, that's awakening. That's your spirit recognizing the sound of its own name being called from heaven's throne room. The isolation wasn't abandonment, it was appointment. God pulled you away from the crowd so He could speak to you privately. so he could download instructions that weren't meant for everyone's ears, so he could prepare you for a mission that required solitude to receive. You thought you were being punished. You were being positioned. You thought you were being forgotten. You were being fashioned. You thought you were being destroyed. You were being distinguished. Every scar tells a story of survival. Every wound speaks of warfare won. Every tear was heaven collecting evidence of your faithfulness when everything else fell apart. And now, right now, God is saying something that's going to shift your entire perspective. What I thought was breaking me was building the version of me that can't be broken. Say it out loud, right now. What I thought was breaking me was building the version of me that can't be broken. Feel that truth settle into your bones. Feel it rewiring your understanding of everything you've endured. The pain wasn't punishment, it was construction. The wilderness wasn't exile, it was education. You weren't being crushed, you were being compressed into something unbreakable. Like a diamond, chosen one, formed under pressure, forged by fire, created through compression. And now you're ready to cut through anything that tries to stand in your way. The version of you that's emerging from this season doesn't bow to rejection, doesn't break under betrayal, doesn't crumble under criticism, because you've already survived the worst they could throw at you, and you're still here, still breathing, still believing, still chosen. The scaffolding is coming down, beloved. The construction zone is almost complete, and what's about to be revealed is going to shock everyone who counted you out. They're about to see what God built in the secret place, what He fashioned in the fire, what He forged in the furnace of your faithful endurance. But there's something else you need to know. Something that changes everything about how you see what's coming next. Do you remember the exact moment you realized you were still breathing? When the smoke cleared and you were still standing? When hell threw everything it had at you, and you're still here? They said the fire would finish you. They said the heat would break your spirit. They said no one survives what you walk through. But here you are, still breathing, still believing, still carrying something they can't understand. You didn't just survive the furnace, beloved. You came out carrying fire. Look at your hands right now. Really look at them. Those aren't just hands that held on when letting go felt easier. Those are hands that touched the face of God in the flames. Those are hands that learned to create from ashes. Those are hands that hell couldn't burn because heaven was holding them. The trauma didn't taint you. The grief didn't gut you. The betrayal didn't break the promise written in your DNA before you took your first breath. You see, chosen one, there's something the enemy miscalculated, something they never factored into their elaborate plan to destroy you. They thought fire destroys, but what they didn't know is that some things, some people, are made of different material. You were forged in the furnace of the Father's love before time began, tempered in the fires of purpose, hardened by hope. And when hell came for you with its biggest weapons, depression, abandonment, betrayal, loss, they discovered something that made them tremble. You don't burn, you brand. The same flames that reduce others to ashes only revealed what was always inside you. Divine DNA. Unbreakable substance, the kind of spiritual material that gets stronger under pressure. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah 43:2. That wasn't just poetry, beloved. That was prophecy. That was God's personal promise to you before you ever felt the heat. What if I told you that every flame that touched your life was actually forging your destiny? What if the depression wasn't defeat but divine metallurgy? What if the isolation wasn't abandonment but sacred separation? The enemy thought they were destroying you. God was developing you. They thought they were breaking you down. Heaven was building you up. They thought they were writing your obituary. The Almighty was authoring your comeback. You are still here, and that is the threat they never expected. Every morning you open your eyes is a testimony that hell's best shot wasn't good enough. Every breath you take is evidence that their fire couldn't finish what God started. Every beat of your heart is a drumbeat of victory that echoes through spiritual realms. What burned others only branded your purpose deeper into your soul. You know what I see when I look at you right now? I don't see someone who barely made it. I see someone who walked through hell and came back with fire in their eyes. I see someone who discovered that the flames that were meant to consume you actually consumed everything that wasn't really you. The fear? Burned away. The doubt? Incinerated. The people-pleasing? Reduced to ash. The need for approval? Completely cremated. What's left? Pure purpose. Refined calling. Distilled destiny. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel it? That warmth in your chest. That's not just healing. That's holy fire. The same fire that Daniel's friends carried. The same fire that Moses saw in the burning bush. The same fire that tongues of flame brought on Pentecost. You're not just a survivor, beloved. You're a carrier. You carry the fire of the one who walked with you in the flames. The fire of breakthrough. The fire of breakthrough. The fire that burns away everything false and leaves only what's eternal. And here's what makes hell nervous. You don't smell like smoke. You don't reek of trauma. You don't carry the stench of bitterness. You don't walk around with the odor of defeat clinging to your clothes. You smell like myrrh and frankincense, like anointing oil and fresh rain, like the perfume of heaven that only comes from intimate encounters with the divine. Chosen one. You don't smell like the fire because you walked with someone in it. The same. Someone who shut the mouths of lions, shut the flames around your destiny. The same someone who parted seas, parted the heat around your purpose. The same someone who raised the dead, raised you from every grave they tried to bury you in. This is your moment of recognition. This is your moment of revelation. This is the moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim of fire and start seeing yourself as a vessel of fire. The flames forged you, but they couldn't finish you. The heat refined you, but it couldn't reduce you. The furnace tested you, but it couldn't terminate you. Because you're not made of the material that burns. You're made of the substance that burns others. You're not fuel for fire. You are the fire. Say this now. Say it out loud. Let your voice carry the authority of someone who has been to hell and back. The flames forged me, but they couldn't finish me. Say it again. Louder. Let the walls hear it. Let the atmosphere feel it. Let every demon that thought you were done understand that you're just getting started. The flames forged me, but they couldn't finish me. One more time. This time, let it come from that place in your spirit where the fire lives, where the unbreakable part of you resides, where God's voice echoes in chambers that hell could never reach. The flames forged me, but they couldn't finish me. Do you feel that? That trembling in the atmosphere? That's not fear, that's recognition. The spiritual realm is remembering who you really are. The kingdom of darkness is realizing their biggest mistake, leaving you alive to tell the story. But this fire you carry, it's not meant to be contained. It's meant to be released. And what you're about to discover next will show you exactly how God intends to use every flame you've walked through to ignite a fire that will never be extinguished. Have you felt it? That strange pulling away from everything that once felt familiar. Have you noticed how your body doesn't quite feel like your own anymore, like you're wearing new skin, breathing different air? What if I told you that what feels like falling apart is actually falling into place? You've been sensing it for weeks now, maybe months. The detachment, the divine disconnection. You sit in rooms full of people and feel like a stranger in your own life. Conversations that once sparked something in you now feel hollow, empty, like echoes in an abandoned cathedral. They think you're withdrawing. They whisper about your silence. They question your absence from their gatherings, their gossip, their small talk that feels smaller by the day. But beloved, what they call withdrawal, heaven calls preparation. You were the one who carried fire in a world built for ice. You were the voice crying in their wilderness, and they couldn't hear the sound of your heart breaking in their presence. So you stopped trying to fit. You stopped shrinking. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your assignment. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. God didn't form you to blend in. He carved you to stand out. And what's happening in your spirit right now, this shift that no one saw coming, it's not random, it's prophetic. Your body feels strange because it's being rewired for a new frequency. Your mind feels sharper because the fog of other people's opinions is finally lifting. That restlessness in your bones, that's not anxiety, that's anticipation. Your spirit recognizing what your flesh hasn't figured out yet. You're not losing your grip. You're losing the grip of everything that doesn't belong. The friendships that drained you, gone. The environments that diminished you, dissolved. The voices that convinced you to stay small, silenced. What if the isolation wasn't punishment, but preparation? What if your silence was sacred, not accidental? What if God pulled you away from the crowd because the crowd couldn't survive where He's taking you? You've been upgraded, chosen one, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and your old life can't contain the new you that's emerging. Think about this. A butterfly doesn't apologize to the caterpillar for growing wings. A river doesn't explain to the pond why it must keep flowing. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for outgrowing spaces that were never meant to hold your destiny. But here's what breaks my heart, and what probably breaks yours too. You've been feeling guilty about the shift. Guilty about not fitting in. Guilty about not being who you used to be. Guilty about the fire in your bones that makes others uncomfortable. Stop, breathe, listen. Close your eyes for just a moment. Can you feel it? That whisper in the quiet spaces of your soul. It's God, and He's saying, I'm not finished with you yet. The people you've outgrown, they're looking at you with confusion. They're asking where you went. They're wondering why you don't laugh at their jokes anymore, why their drama doesn't move you, why their emergencies don't alarm you. It's because you've been in the wilderness where God rebuilds people, where He strips away everything that isn't essential, where He teaches you to hear His voice above every other sound that's been competing for your attention. They won't recognize you because they weren't in the fire that forged you. They weren't in the silence that shaped you. They weren't in the breaking that actually made you whole. You're walking differently now, talking differently, breathing differently. There's a peace in your posture that wasn't there before, a knowing in your eyes that they can't quite place, a strength in your stillness that intimidates the storm makers. What if I told you that this shift, this divine disconnection you've been experiencing, it's not the end of your story, it's the editing process. God is removing the scenes that don't serve the plot. He's writing. He's cutting the characters who were only meant for one season. He's rewriting the dialogue in your heart. You're not becoming antisocial. You're becoming spiritually selective. You're not growing cold. You're growing wise. You're not shutting down. You're tuning into a frequency that most people can't hear. The shift no one saw coming. It's you stepping out of their timeline and into God's. It's you refusing to live by their calendar, their expectations, their definition of who you should be and how you should show up. Your energy is different now. Your priorities have realigned. Your tolerance for spiritual mediocrity has vanished. And that's not accident, that's assignment. God is shifting you from survival mode to destiny mode, from people-pleasing to purpose-walking, from performing for applause to moving in anointing. But here's the urgency I need you to hear. This shift is happening whether you embrace it or resist it. The question is, will you fight the current or let it carry you to the shore God has prepared? Will you keep trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for your wingspan? Or will you spread those wings and soar into the atmosphere that's been waiting for your arrival? The old version of you, the one they're mourning, the one they keep asking about, that version served its purpose. But it was never meant to be permanent. It was the cocoon, not the butterfly. It was the rehearsal, not the performance. It was the preparation, not the presentation. Chosen one, declare it with me right now. I no longer match the version of me they tried to destroy. Say it again. I no longer match the version of me they tried to destroy. Feel those words in your chest. Let them settle in your spirit. Let them become the anthem of your transformation. The shift is complete. The upgrade is done. The old operating system has been deleted, and you're running on new spiritual software that they don't have access to. They won't recognize you. And that's exactly how God planned it. because the you they knew was just the preview. What's coming next is the feature film. And beloved, you're about to discover that everything you thought you lost in the shifting was actually everything that was holding you back from the glory that's been waiting to be revealed. But what if I told you that this shift, this divine disconnection, was just the beginning? What if the real surprise isn't what you're leaving behind, but what's about to be unveiled in you? Have you ever walked into a room and felt the shift? Have you noticed how people look at you differently, now not with pity, but with something they can't name? Do you sense something moving around you, something invisible yet undeniable, like the air itself is charged with purpose? Listen carefully, chosen one. What you're feeling isn't imagination, it's manifestation. You've been wondering why conversations stop when you enter, why old friends seem uncomfortable in your presence, why strangers stare a little too long, their eyes searching for something they can't quite grasp. You thought you were losing your mind. You thought you were becoming strange, different, maybe even broken. But what if I told you, you're not becoming different? You're becoming dangerous. Not dangerous to people, dangerous to principalities, dangerous to systems, dangerous to the status quo that tried to bury you alive. You were the one who carried fire in a world built for ice, the one who spoke truth in boardrooms full of lies, the one who loved too hard, trusted too deep, believed too much. They called you naive. They labeled you intense. They whispered that you were too much. But heaven whispered something different. Heaven whispered, you're exactly enough. And now, right now, something is happening to you that science can't measure but spirits can feel. You're being cloaked, wrapped, sealed in something that makes demons tremble and angels take notice. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. 1 Peter 2-9. You see that? Not you will be chosen. You are chosen. Not you might become royal. You are royal. Present tense. Active voice. Divine declaration. They can't touch you now. Not because you're hiding, you're done hiding, but because God has sealed you in plain sight. You're walking around wrapped in glory so thick, so undeniable, that the enemy's weapons don't even reach your skin anymore. That glow on you, the one that makes people stare, it's not makeup, beloved. It's mantle. It's not confidence, though you have that now. It's covering, divine covering. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You've caught glimpses of it in mirrors lately. Something in your eyes that wasn't there before. Something in your posture that speaks before you do. Something in your presence that shifts the spiritual climate of every space you enter. What if the delay wasn't rejection but divine incubation? What if your silence was sacred preparation, not accidental abandonment? What if every closed door was God's way of keeping you contained until the glory finished forming around you? Because here's what they don't understand. You didn't just survive the fire, you were transfigured in it. Close your eyes for a moment. Can you feel it? That shift in your spiritual atmosphere, that's not your imagination, that's transformation completing itself. You're not the same person who entered the wilderness. You couldn't be. Fire changes everything it touches, and you've been touched by holy fire. You're walking differently now. Your stride carries authority you didn't earn, you inherited it. Your voice resonates at frequencies that move more than air, they move atmospheres. Your presence doesn't whisper anymore, it announces. This is why old relationships feel strange now. This is why familiar places feel foreign. This is why you can't squeeze back into spaces that once defined you. You've outgrown them. Not with arrogance, with anointing. The butterfly doesn't explain the cocoon, it just flies. And you, chosen one, are done explaining your transformation to people who weren't in the cocoon with you. You're done defending your glory to those who celebrated your burial. You're done dimming your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. Because the truth is this. They're not reacting to your personality anymore. They're responding to your presence. They're not uncomfortable with who you are. They're disturbed by what you carry. You shift rooms now without trying. You change conversations without speaking. You alter spiritual climates just by breathing in the space. That's not ego talking. That's anointing announcing itself. Some of them will love what they see. Others will fear it. Most won't understand it. But all of them will feel it. Because when heaven clothes someone in glory, the covering isn't subtle, it's seismic. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. 2 Corinthians 3:18. Ever-increasing glory, not one-time transformation. Continuous revelation, daily transfiguration. You're not done changing, beloved. You're just getting started. Every morning you wake up more dangerous to darkness than you were the day before. Every sunset finds you carrying more authority than you had at sunrise. This isn't a season of glory, this is your new normal. And here's what terrifies the enemy. You're finally beginning to see yourself the way heaven has always seen you. Not as the wounded one, as the warrior. Not as the broken one, as the breakthrough. Not as the victim of your story, as the victor writing new chapters. They said you'd never recover. They prophesied your permanent defeat. They celebrated your silence as surrender. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't see, is that God was using their hatred as a cocoon, their rejection as incubation, their abandonment as divine appointment. You weren't being destroyed. You were being distinguished. And now the distinguishing is complete. The glory isn't coming, it's here. The anointing isn't approaching, it's active. The mantle isn't being prepared, it's positioned. You are cloaked in something they can't counterfeit, can't duplicate, can't diminish. This isn't religious rhetoric, beloved. This is spiritual reality. Look in the mirror tonight. Really look. Do you see it? That light in your eyes that wasn't there in your darkest hour. That strength in your jaw that suffering tried to steal. That peace in your countenance that chaos couldn't break. That's glory, chosen one. And it's not going anywhere. Say it softly but surely. I am cloaked in a glory no one can counterfeit. Say it again, louder this time. I am cloaked in a glory no one can counterfeit. One more time, with the authority of someone who knows who they are. I am cloaked in a glory no one can counterfeit. Because you are, and they can feel it, and it changes everything. But here's what will shock you about what comes next. This glory you're wearing, it's not just for you. Have you ever felt like you were running behind? Like everyone else got the memo about when to succeed, when to marry, when to break through, and somehow you missed the meeting? Have you been counting birthdays like prison sentences, watching calendars like death warrants, wondering if God forgot to set your alarm clock for destiny? Listen to me, beloved. You were never late. The world was early. You see, there's something they never told you about divine timing. Something the rush and grind culture buried under deadlines and quarterly reports. Your life was never meant to tick to the rhythm of their clocks. You were wired for eternity's pulse, calibrated for heaven's calendar, synchronized with the heartbeat of the one who spoke galaxies into existence. You felt it, didn't you? That restlessness when everyone else was celebrating their right-on-time moments. That quiet knowing that whispered, "This isn't your season yet." That stubborn hope that refused to die even when every earthly indicator screamed, "You missed it." You didn't miss anything. You were being positioned. The prophet Isaiah heard it first. "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." God doesn't wear a Rolex. Heaven doesn't punch a time clock. And the creator of time itself isn't bound by the schedules that have been suffocating your soul. What if I told you that every delay was divine protection? What if every not yet was God's way of saying, "Not until you're ready for what I'm really preparing"? What if your late blooming wasn't a bug in the system, but the feature that makes you unstoppable? Close your eyes for just a moment. Can you feel it? That shift in your chest? That's not anxiety about being behind. That's your spirit, recognizing that you're about to step into a dimension where acceleration is automatic, where breakthrough isn't earned, it's breathed. Where what took others decades happens in moments because you're finally moving in divine flow instead of earthly friction. You've been trying to catch up to a race you were never meant to run. But something happened on the 30th of July. Something shifted in the invisible realm. The cosmic tumblers clicked into place. Heaven's vault opened. And what's been locked away, your real timeline, your true pace, your destined acceleration was released. You're not late, chosen one. You're right on heaven's time. And heaven's time moves differently. It bends, it stretches, it compresses years into weeks when God decides to move. It can make up for lost time in ways that defy every natural law of progress and process. Remember Moses? Spent 40 years in the wilderness thinking he'd blown his chance. Then at 80, God said, "Now you're ready." And in the next 40 years, he rewrote history, split seas, and led a nation to freedom. Remember Sarah, barren for decades, laughed at, counted out. Then at 90, God said, "Your time is now." And she gave birth to the child of promise, the one who would father a chosen nation. Your age isn't disqualification. Your delay isn't denial. Your late start isn't a limitation. It's divine strategy. Because when God accelerates your timeline, when he compresses your breakthrough into moments instead of years, when he fast-tracks your destiny, it's so obviously supernatural that no one can take credit but him. You feel it happening, don't you? That quickening in your spirit, that sense that time itself is shifting around you. Projects that should take months, suddenly clicking into place in days. Relationships that seemed impossible suddenly aligning. Doors that were locked for years suddenly swinging wide open. This isn't luck. This isn't coincidence. This is divine acceleration. You've stepped off man's schedule and into divine flow. And in divine flow, the laws of natural progression bow to the will of supernatural intervention. What took others years will come to you in weeks. What they struggled for, you'll stride into. What they climbed for, you'll be lifted to. Because you're no longer moving at the pace of human effort. You're moving at the speed of divine favor. The timeline that crushed others, that broke their spirits and buried their dreams, that timeline has no authority over you anymore. You're operating in a different dimension now. A place where God suddenly interrupts man's eventually, where his right now overrides their maybe someday. You see, beloved, there are two calendars operating in this universe. Earth's calendar with its deadlines and disappointments, its biological clocks and business quarters. And then there's heaven's calendar where everything happens in divine timing, where the last become first, where what was barren suddenly becomes fruitful, where what was buried suddenly becomes beautiful. And you just got transferred, from earth time to heaven time, from Chronos to Kairos, from the tyranny of ticking clocks to the freedom of divine flow. This is why you feel different now, why sleep comes easier, why peace settles deeper, why hope rises stronger. You're not fighting time anymore, you're flowing with it. You're not racing against clocks, you're resting in calling. The pressure is off, the panic is gone, the frantic scrambling to catch up finished, because you finally understand you were never behind. You were just waiting for the right moment to step into the timeline that was always yours. And that moment is now. What does this mean for your life? It means every dream that seemed too late is suddenly right on time. Every vision that felt expired gets a divine resurrection. Every plan that got derailed gets a supernatural reroute that leads somewhere better than you originally imagined. The business you wanted to start at 30, it's going to be more successful at 50 because you bring wisdom now, not just enthusiasm. The ministry you thought you missed, it's going to have more impact now because your message comes from the depths of experience, not the shallows of theory. The love you thought passed you by, it's going to be deeper now because you know the difference between settling and soaring. You're not starting over, you're starting up. You're not falling behind, you're rising above. You're not too late for your destiny. You're right on time for your divine assignment. And here's the beautiful truth they never told you. The best wine comes last. The greatest harvest happens in the final hour. The most powerful moves of God often come through the ones who waited the longest. endured the most, and learned that his timing is always perfect, even when it feels painfully delayed. So breathe, chosen one. Breathe deep. Let your shoulders drop. Let the tension melt. Let the race mentality die. You're not late. You're right where you need to be, right when you need to be there. Say this with boldness, with authority, with the confidence of someone who finally understands their true position in time. I am no longer bound by clocks. I move by calling. I am no longer subject to earthly deadlines. I flow with divine timing. I am no longer behind. I am exactly where heaven placed me, exactly when heaven planned it. And if you can feel that truth settling into your bones, into your bloodstream, into your very DNA, then you're ready for what comes next. Because when you step out of earthly time and into divine flow, when you stop racing and start resting in His perfect timing, that's when miracles stop being rare and start being regular. Do you remember the moment you realized they weren't just ignoring you, they were hunting you? When the whispers behind closed doors became warfare in broad daylight? When you finally understood that their rejection wasn't personal, it was prophetic? Chosen one, listen to me. Every arrow they aimed at your heart, every door they slammed in your face, every time they called you too much or not enough, they were actually confirming something they couldn't see, but heaven had already sealed. You were the prophecy they tried to abort, the glory they never saw coming, the assignment wrapped in flesh that made hell nervous and heaven expectant. They tried everything, didn't they? The subtle sabotage, the character assassination, the slow suffocation of your dreams through 1,000 tiny cuts of criticism. They mocked your vision. They manipulated your emotions. They minimized your calling until you almost believed their version of your story. But here's what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, because it was written in divine ink before they ever drew breath. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. You weren't just chosen, beloved. You were chosen first. Before their opinions, before their rejections, before their campaigns to convince you that ordinary was your ceiling, the oil on your life, that sacred anointing that makes rooms shift when you walk in. They couldn't touch it, couldn't dilute it, couldn't drain it. No matter how hard they tried to squeeze the life out of your purpose, the assignment remained intact, untouchable, unbreakable, undeniable. What if I told you their attacks weren't random? What if every betrayal was actually a divine redirect? What if God used their hatred like a GPS system, rerouting you away from destinations that would have destroyed you and toward the throne room they never knew you were destined for? They succeeded at breaking your routine, but they couldn't touch your reign. Pause. Breathe. Can you feel it? That stirring in your chest isn't anxiety anymore. It's awakening. That restlessness in your spirit isn't confusion. It's confirmation. You're not falling apart. You're falling into place. The throne isn't coming, chosen one. It's been waiting. Not for applause. Applause fades. Not for recognition. Recognition is temporary. The throne has been prepared for assignment, for the work only you can do, for the breakthrough only your specific anointing can birth. You see, they thought the silence meant God had changed His mind about you. They celebrated when you withdrew. They threw parties when you stopped trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for your dimensions. But God was orchestrating something in the shadows they couldn't see. Every night you cried yourself to sleep, thinking you were forgotten. Heaven was downloading strategy. Every morning you woke up feeling lost. Your spiritual GPS was being recalibrated. Every door that closed in your face was actually God protecting you from settling for less than His best. They broke your routine because your routine was killing your assignment. They disrupted your comfort because comfort was choking your calling. They forced you into isolation because isolation was actually incubation, and what's being born through you needs sacred space to develop. The enemy made one fatal miscalculation. He thought attacking your emotions would abort your assignment. He thought if he could convince you that you were unwanted, unloved, and unnecessary, the mission would die with your confidence. But assignments don't live in your emotions, beloved. They live in your DNA. They're woven into your cellular structure. They're encrypted in your fingerprints and embedded in your breath. You can't kill what God has already resurrected. The very people who tried to bury you alive are about to witness your emergence, not as the broken version they thought they created, but as the refined, fortified, fire-tested version that only divine adversity could forge. They're about to see what happens when heaven takes the raw materials of rejection and crafts them into authority. When God takes the fragments of your shattered dreams and rebuilds them into something they never imagined you could become. You're not recovering from what they did to you. You're revealing what God was doing through what they did to you. The assignment outlived the attack. The mission survived the opposition. The calling conquered the chaos. And now, the 30th of July stands before you like a divine threshold, not as the beginning of something new, but as the unveiling of something that was always true. You were never broken. You were being built. You were never forgotten. You were being fashioned. You were never forsaken. You were being formed into the exact shape of your destiny. Every tear was an investment. Every betrayal was a blueprint. Every rejection was a redirection toward the life they tried to convince you didn't exist. Chosen one. If you know in the depths of your spirit that the battle didn't kill the mission, that everything they did failed to stop what God has already ordained, then say it now. Say it out loud. Let your voice carry the authority of someone who has survived hell and emerged holding fire. Chosen one, we've walked through sacred territory together tonight. Let me remind you of the unshakable truths we've uncovered. The invisible war was real, but you survived it. You were marked while you bled, but the oil never left you. The 30th of July isn't just a date, it's your divine reset. You were never broken, only built by the Master's hands. The fire failed to consume you because you carried someone in the flames with you. Remember this, you're experiencing a shift no one saw coming. You're cloaked in a glory that can't be counterfeited. Your life has stepped out of earthly time into divine flow. They failed every single attack, every manipulation, every attempt to silence your assignment. They all failed. Because what God ordains, no human can abort. Tonight, I want you to understand something that settles deeper than doctrine, deeper than theology, deeper than religious theory. You are not alone. You have never been alone. Even in the darkest seasons, when your prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling, when your tears seemed to fall into an empty void, when the silence stretched so long you wondered if heaven had forgotten your address, you were not alone. God was orchestrating. Angels were positioned. Your breakthrough was being carefully crafted in realms you couldn't see. And right now, in this very moment, there's a community of chosen ones watching these words, feeling these same stirrings, recognizing these same spiritual fingerprints on their lives. You're not the only one who's walked through the fire. You're not the only one who's carried wounds that felt too deep for healing. You're not the only one who's wondered if your assignment died in the attack. We're here. We see you. We recognize the oil on your life because we carry it too. But I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. If everything you've endured was preparation, if every rejection was redirection, if every tear was an investment in your divine destiny, what are you going to do with the authority you've been given? How will you steward the fire that refused to be extinguished? How will you honor the assignment that outlived every attack? Before you close this video, before you return to your regular evening, I want to pray over you. Not a casual prayer, not a religious formality, but a deep, powerful blessing spoken from one who understands your journey. Close your eyes if you can. Feel the presence of the living God surrounding you right now. Father, I lift up every chosen one listening to these words tonight. The ones who've walked through valleys that had no names, the ones who've carried burdens too heavy for their shoulders, the ones who've wondered if their pain had purpose, if their silence had meaning, if their tears were being collected in your bottle. God, you see the ones who've been misunderstood, overlooked, underestimated. You see the ones whose families couldn't grasp their calling, whose friends couldn't comprehend their consecration, whose communities couldn't contain their anointing. Touch them now with your healing hand. Release them from the prison of other people's opinions. Break every chain of rejection that's wrapped around their destiny. Silence every voice that's whispered lies about their worth, their calling, their future. Let them hear only your voice, the voice that called them before they were formed, the voice that has never stopped speaking their name. Open doors that no human can shut. Restore what the enemy thought he had stolen. Return the years the locusts have eaten. Let their latter days be greater than their former days. Give them beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, praise for the spirit of heaviness. And Lord, as they step into this new season, this divine reset that began the 30th of July, let them walk with the confidence of those who know they are chosen, called, and commissioned. Let their light shine so brightly that it illuminates the path for others who are still finding their way out of the wilderness. Bless them with supernatural favor. Surround them with divine connections. Release financial breakthrough, relational restoration, physical healing, and spiritual awakening. Let this be the season when everything shifts in their favor, not because they deserve it, but because you are faithful to complete what you've begun. In the mighty name of Jesus, we declare it, we receive it, we walk in it. Amen. Now, beloved, if this message has touched something deep in your spirit, I want you to do something. Leave a comment below. Tell us what God spoke to your heart tonight. Share the one thing you're choosing to believe about yourself that you've been afraid to believe before. And if you know someone who needs to hear these words, someone who's been walking through their own wilderness, someone who's questioning their assignment, someone who needs to be reminded that they are chosen, share this message with them. Don't let them walk alone when they could walk in the light of this truth. Your testimony has power. Your story has purpose. Your voice might be the one that pulls someone else out of the darkness they've been sitting in. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey tonight. Thank you for having the courage to believe that your life is bigger than your current circumstances. Thank you for being willing to step into the truth of who you really are. If this channel has been a source of encouragement to you, if these words have brought light to dark places in your heart, I invite you to subscribe. Join this community of chosen ones who are rising together, who are supporting each other, who are refusing to let anyone walk alone. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a word that heaven wants to speak over your life. Remember, chosen one. Your assignment is awakening. Your mission is mobilizing. And the very people who tried to break you are about to witness what happens when God rebuilds someone with eternal materials. The best is yet to come, and it starts now. Go in peace, walk in power, live in the truth of who you are. You are chosen, you are called, you are commissioned, and you are loved beyond measure.